Stingy old man. My son-in-law threw wine in my face during Christmas dinner when I refused to give up my bedroom for his parents. My daughter added, "Don't call me your daughter anymore." I smiled calmly, got up, and dialed the number. Phase 1 complete. Then came the betrayal, the revenge, and the justice. The police arrived. Before we continue, please subscribe to William's Revenge Stories and tell us where you are listening from in the comments. My hand was still on the doorknob when I heard their voices. I had returned early from Richard Foster's office. The traffic downtown had been lighter than expected, and now I was paralyzed in my own hallway, keys digging into my palm. When he is gone, this place will finally make sense. Sarah's voice drifted from the living room, as casual as if she were discussing the weather. "We have already waited 3 years. That was Michael, my son-in-law. How much longer are we supposed to pretend? I should have announced myself. I should have walked in, asked about their day, played the role I had been playing since they moved into my house in the upscale neighborhood. Instead, I stood motionless, listening. This house is a waste for a single old man," Sarah continued. Something in her tone, not exactly cruel but careless, made my chest tighten. "We deserve to be here. We earned it." "Of course we did," Michael said. 3 years keeping him company, making sure he is not alone. That is worth something. I backed away slowly, placing each foot carefully. The third floorboard from the door creaked if you stepped wrong. I had learned that when Sarah was a teenager and used to sneak in after curfew. Now I used that same knowledge to retreat in silence, to step back out and close the door without a sound. 30 seconds. I counted them, standing on my own porch in the December rain. Then I opened the door normally, letting it swing wide, keys jingling. I am home. Traffic was terrible coming back from downtown. The living room went silent. When I walked in, Sarah was examining her nails with sudden, intense interest. Michael's laptop was open on the coffee table, screen tilted away from me. "Oh, Dad, we didn't hear you come in." Sarah's voice had transformed. Bright, welcoming, fake. "I just got back from running some errands." I set my briefcase down carefully. "What are you two doing?" "Nothing important." Michael closed the laptop with a soft click. "Discussing Christmas plans?" "Ah, yes. The holidays. Always a busy time." I walked to the kitchen, poured myself water I did not want, and stared out at the rain-soaked backyard. 3 years of suspicion. 3 years documenting, watching, hoping I was wrong. Now I had confirmation, delivered in their own careless words. That night, I refilled my coffee mug and walked past the dining room. Michael was sitting there, hunched over his laptop. Absorbed. The angle was wrong for him to notice me, but perfect for me to see the screen's reflection in the antique mirror my late wife, Claire, had loved. Home equity line of credit, power of attorney, elderly father, property valuation, upscale residential zone. He punched numbers into a calculator. $850,000. Then $200,000. Estimated monthly payments scrolled across the screen. My hand tightened around the mug until my knuckles ached, but my face remained neutral. I continued to my study without a word. Dinner was at 7. Sarah had cooked, which was rare enough to be notable. She pushed food around her plate, cutting the chicken into precise pieces she barely ate. "Hey, Dad, I wanted to mention something to you." She touched the pearl necklace I had given her for her 30th birthday. "Michael's parents are coming to visit for Christmas." "Linda and Robert?" "That is nice." "When do they arrive?" "Day after tomorrow." "They will stay for about a week." I nodded, chewing slowly. "The guest room is available." "Well, actually," Sarah's fork paused in the air. "Linda has back problems. The mattress in the guest room might not be ideal for her. I can buy a new mattress." "It is not that. I mean, it would just be easier if they had a more comfortable space." "Yes, Hugh. Too fast. Too sharp. You know how Linda is with comfort." Michael said nothing, but his expression was smug, satisfied. "I see." I set my fork down carefully. "We will discuss this later." The rest of dinner passed in tense silence. Sarah asked about my day. I mentioned errands, a meeting, nothing specific. Michael excused himself early. Citing work emails, Sarah cleared the dishes with exaggerated kindness, like a child trying to win favor after misbehaving. By 10, they had retreated to their bedroom. I waited until I heard the door click shut, their voices murmuring behind it, before moving. My study was on the first floor, oak-paneled and quiet. I locked the door, a habit from my years as an accountant protecting client files. Now I was protecting something more valuable. The desk drawer required a key I kept separate from my main keychain. Inside was a thick accordion folder, meticulously organized. I spread the contents across the mahogany surface like a card player revealing a winning hand. Trust documents, loan notifications, everything. He agreed. Tomorrow at 9 in the morning, at his downtown office. Good. I will see you at 9. And Richard, thank you for your patience these last 6 months. I hung up and allowed myself a small, cold smile. I did not sleep that night, not from anxiety. I was past that. I sat at the kitchen table as dawn broke. Rain drummed against the windows. My documentation folder sat beside me like a loyal soldier. Credit reports, showing their mounting debts, their minimum payments, their careful avoidance of anything resembling financial responsibility. Photographs, screenshots of Michael's laptop captured over months, search histories, loan applications, property value estimates, audio files saved on my phone, backed up on 3 separate drives. Our state was one that allowed single-party consent recording. Every conversation I had been part of was legally recordable. And finally, dated that very morning, trust documents, irrevocable. The house, upon my death, would transfer to the charities Claire and I had always supported. Sarah would inherit nothing but debt. I took out my phone and dialed. Richard, this is Arthur. My voice was steady. 3 years of practice controlling it. Richard Foster had been my lawyer for 20 years. He knew what this call meant. We need to move forward. Tomorrow morning, if possible. His reply was measured. Professional, asking about timing, about certainty, about consequences. Yes, they have made their final move. It is time to execute phase 1. I paused, looking at the evidence spread before me. The trust documents, loan notifications, everything. He agreed. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., in his downtown office. Good. I will see you at 9. And Richard, thank you for your patience these last 6 months. I hung up and allowed myself a small, cold smile. I did not sleep that night, not from anxiety. I was past that. I sat at the kitchen table as dawn broke. Rain drummed against the windows, my documentation folder beside me like a loyal soldier. 3 years of evidence. Today I would add the final pieces. At 6:45 a.m., I was checking my checklist one last time. Trust documents, ready for signature. Loan documentation, organized chronologically. Revocation of power of attorney, drafted and notarized. Everything Richard and I had spent 6 months preparing. Sarah and Michael's alarm went off upstairs around 7:30. I heard it through the ceiling. I heard the shower start. By 8:15, I was in my car, pulling out of the driveway before they had finished their coffee. I let them wonder where I had gone. I let them assume I was running errands as always. Richard Foster's office occupied the 14th floor of a glass building downtown. Rain lashed against the windows as we sat opposite each other, papers between us. This is the final set. Richard slid a leather portfolio toward me. Once you sign, the trust is irrevocable. The house will transfer to the designated charities upon your death. Your daughter will have no legal claim. I opened it, scanning terms I had already memorized. And the loan documentation, all valid. Every payment you made on their behalf was documented as a loan, not a gift. Their signatures are on file. A total of $127,000. The number was satisfying in its weight. Real. Undeniable. When can we deliver the notice? Whenever you are ready. But Arthur leaned forward, hands clasped. Are you sure? This will destroy the relationship with your daughter. I looked him in the eye. Richard had known Claire. He had handled her estate when cancer took her 4 years ago. He understood what family meant to me. But he did not understand what these 3 years had cost me. She destroyed it herself. I am simply acknowledging reality. Sign. Every stroke of the pen felt like closing a door I had kept open too long. Trust document, loan notices, power of attorney revocation. My signature, witnessed and notarized, making it all official. By 11, I was home. The house smelled of coffee and Sarah's expensive perfume. She was in the living room, phone pressed to her ear, laughing at something someone said. She waved at me distractedly as she walked by. The next 3 days blurred into a choreography of small humiliations. Dad, we need the Christmas decorations from the attic. All of them. Today, Sarah stood at the foot of the attic stairs, never looking up from her phone. I was 64 years old, climbing into the dust and heat, bringing down box after box. 8 in total, each heavy with ornaments, lights, artificial garlands that Claire had collected over decades. Be careful with the ornaments. Some are expensive, Sarah said when I almost dropped the 7th box. Michael walked past me without acknowledging me. He offered no help. He did not even slow down. I said nothing. Every box I brought down was a test. Every ignored courtesy was documentation of who they had become. Here is what we need for Christmas dinner. Sarah handed me a handwritten list the next morning. Stick to these brands. Linda will notice if we buy cheap. I scanned the items. Organic turkey, imported cheese. Specific wines I knew cost $65 a bottle. This will be expensive. It is Christmas, Dad. Don't be cheap. Something in her tone, dismissive, entitled. It reminded me of Michael. They had been married 5 years. Sometimes people became their spouses. Sometimes they had always been that way and marriage just gave them permission. How much do you expect this to cost? $400 maybe? Can you afford it? At the supermarket, I loaded the cart methodically. Premium ingredients, exact brands. 3 bottles of wine at $65 each. The cashier rang up the total. $427. I handed her my credit card and watched her swipe it. I watched the receipt print. Bank statements. 3 years of charges from Sarah on cards I had temporarily covered. $95,000 in total. Every statement highlighted. Dated. Cross-referenced. A loan agreement. $32,000 for Sarah's luxury car. Signed 2 years ago. Due in 12 months. That deadline had passed 18 months ago. Her signature was clear at the bottom. Another entry for the folder. Another brick in the wall I was building. That night, December 18th, 3 days before Michael's parents arrived, I needed a screwdriver from the garage, something to adjust the loose handle on my study door. Simple task. I heard Michael's voice before I opened the door, talking on the phone. Assuming he was alone, I stopped, took out my phone, activated the voice recorder. I stood motionless outside the garage door. The inheritance process is speeding up. My finger pressed harder on the phone, making sure it was recording. Medical reasons. Michael continued. No death yet, but the old man is declining. Power of attorney first, then transfer. It should be finalized by the end of January. 4 minutes. That is how long he spoke, outlining his timeline, his strategy, his absolute certainty that my house would be his. When I heard him move toward the side door of the house, I slipped around the corner. I waited for him to pass, and then I entered through the exterior entrance. The recording was already uploading to cloud storage. December 19th arrived cold and gray. Linda and Robert were arriving tomorrow. Sarah had been increasingly anxious all day, cleaning, rearranging, giving me instructions on how things should be. At 8 in the evening, she summoned me to the living room. She did not ask. She summoned. Michael stood behind the sofa, arms crossed. Sarah sat, pointing to the chair opposite, not offering, ordering. Dad, sit down. We need to discuss something important. I sat. Linda and Robert arrive tomorrow. They need adequate sleeping arrangements. The guest room is prepared. Michael shifted his weight. Linda has back problems. The guest room mattress will not work. You need to move to the basement room for the week. The words hung in the air. 3 years had been leading to this moment. The moment they stopped pretending and simply demanded. No. Sarah blinked. What? I said no. This is my house. My bedroom. I am not moving. Are you serious right now? Michael's voice rose. After everything we have done for you, something cold settled in my chest. Calm. Final. What exactly have you done for me? We live here. His face was flushing. We keep you company. We could be anywhere, building our own lives. But we stay here, taking care of you. Taking care of me? You pay no rent? No bills? No food? I have covered every expense for 3 years. Sarah's eyes were wet now. How can you be so cruel? We sacrificed our independence to be here for you. Sacrificed or convenient? Michael stepped forward. This house will be Sarah's anyway. You know that. We are just speeding up the inevitable. There it was. The final confirmation delivered with such casual certainty they believed they had already won. I stood up slowly. I see. Thank you for clarifying your intentions. That is very helpful. Dad, wait. No. I think we have said everything that needed to be said. Excuse me. I walked to my study. I locked the door and took the folder from my desk drawer. I spread everything out on the mahogany surface again, but this time with different eyes, not reviewing, admiring. 3 years. 1,095 days of documentation. Every slight. Every expense. Every entitled demand. All recorded. Filed. Notarized. They thought I was weak. They thought age had made me manageable. They were about to learn otherwise. The law was on my side. The evidence was overwhelming. And most importantly, they had shown me exactly who they were. No more doubts, no more guilt, only action. I closed the folder and allowed myself a genuine smile. Not warm, but satisfied. The trap was set. They had walked in willingly. Linda and Robert arrived the next afternoon in a luxury rental car, a black SUV that announced their presence even before they reached the door. I watched from my study window as Michael rushed down the steps to the Porsche, arms outstretched in greeting. Sarah appeared from the kitchen, smoothing her dress with nervous hands. Linda emerged from the SUV like royalty inspecting conquered territory. Designer heels touched the wet pavement first, impractical shoes for December rain. She paused before getting out completely, her gaze sweeping the property with visible appraisal. She wrinkled her nose slightly. Robert went around to retrieve the luggage while Linda remained motionless, letting the rain dampen her coat instead of rushing inside. I remained at the window, cataloging details, Michael's eager gestures, Sarah's nervous fluttering, Linda's critical scrutiny of my home's exterior, Robert's passive trailing carrying 2 large suitcases suggesting they planned an extended stay. When they entered the foyer, I heard Linda's voice clearly through the open door of my study. Well, it is certainly spacious, though the aesthetic is quite dated. We have been planning some updates. Sarah's laugh was brittle. Modern touches. I hope so. This wallpaper must be from the 90 seconds. And that chandelier, a dismissive gesture I could not see but could imagine perfectly. Once we are settled properly, we will renovate completely, Michael said. Once you have the authority, yes. Until then, I suppose we endure. I stepped out of my study. Linda, Robert, welcome to my home. Linda barely looked at me. Arthur, thank you for accommodating us on such short notice. Family is always welcome. How kind. Although I understand the guest room situation is less than ideal. Dinner that night was pure theater. I had prepared roast chicken, vegetables, wine, simple, but quality. Linda dominated the conversation with surgical precision. Arthur, this house really is excessive for one person. Do you not find it overwhelming? I have lived here 15 years. I am comfortable. Comfortable, maybe, but practical. She gestured with her fork. A man of your age in a 3-story house, just the stairs must be exhausting. Mom is right, Arthur. Michael leaned back, expansive. Senior living communities offer so many advantages. I am 64 years old. I am not invalid, yet. Linda's smile did not reach her eyes. None of us stays young forever. Michael has told me about your memory lapses. My what? Just little things, Dad. Sarah spoke quickly. You know, losing keys, forgetting appointments. I have lost my keys twice in 3 years. I have not forgotten any appointments. Denial is common. Linda cut her chicken with exaggerated care. My mother was the same before we had to intervene. Linda, maybe, Robert started. Robert, please. She silenced him with a look. Michael deserves this house. He has earned it with patience and devotion. Earned? How? I kept my voice level. Staying with you, of course. Caring for you? That is worth something. I said nothing more. Every comment was a small blade, placed with precision. I noted them all. Linda's casual cruelty, Sarah's enthusiastic agreement, Michael's smug satisfaction, Robert's guilty silence. This was rehearsed, coordinated. They had planned this assault before arriving. After dinner, I excused myself, citing fatigue. In my study, I sat in the dark, door slightly ajar. Around 11 at night, voices drifted from the living room, the four of them speaking in low but excited tones. I moved silently down the hall, positioning myself in the shadows where I could hear but remain hidden. My phone was already in my hand, recorder activated, volume muted. I have looked into the legal avenue. Michael's voice conveyed confidence. Power of attorney based on diminished capacity. It is completely legitimate if we have medical documentation. But Dad seems mentally fine, Sarah said. How would we do it? I know someone. Linda's voice was practical. Dr. Herman Thomas. He and I have an understanding. For $3,000, he will perform an assessment and provide the necessary diagnosis. Linda, that is fraud. Robert's objection was weak. It is convenience, Robert. Don't be naive. What if Dad refuses to see this doctor? Sarah asked. He won't know he is being evaluated. Thomas will come here as a friend of the family. He will make observations. He will file his report with the court. My legs ached from standing still, but I did not move. Every word was evidence. Once power of attorney is granted, you will have full control, Linda continued. Financial, medical, residential decisions, everything. And then, Sarah's voice was small. Then we move him to an appropriate facility. Green Oaks residence has an excellent memory care unit. But he does not have memory problems. Michael's reply was cold. He will, according to the documentation. That is the point. Sarah, get it through your head. The house transfers to you. Michael gets the line of credit he needs for his business expansion. And everyone benefits. Everyone except Dad. He will be comfortable, well-fed. Honestly, it is better for him. He does not need the stress of managing this property. Exactly. Linda's voice held satisfaction. Really, we are doing him a favor. I stood there for 47 minutes, recording every word. My hands remained steady. This was not shock. It was confirmation. When they finally dispersed to their rooms, I returned to my study and backed up the recording to 3 separate cloud services. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen at 8. They were already seated, unusual since they typically slept late. Good morning, I said pleasantly. I have errands to run today. Linda barely acknowledged me, discussing with Sarah changes she would make to the living room. Michael was on his phone, fingers moving rapidly across the screen, likely texting the corrupt doctor. I will be back this afternoon. I took my coffee mug to the sink, rinsed it carefully. Where are you going? Michael asked without looking up. The bank, paperwork, the usual. At 9:30, I was pulling into the parking lot of Patricia Roberts' office building downtown. Patricia had been my notary for 20 years. She had handled my first real estate deals. She had helped me build my accounting business. When I walked into her office, she smiled warmly until she saw my expression. Arthur, what is wrong? I placed my phone on her desk. Listen to this. We sat in silence as the recording played. Patricia's face hardened progressively, professional concern giving way to outrage. When Linda mentioned Dr. Thomas, Patricia took notes. When Michael discussed memory care facilities for a man without memory problems, her pen pressed harder against the paper. When it ended, she played it again, transcribing key passages. This is conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse. Her voice was tight, but we need to move fast. If they contact this Thomas before we act, he could file false documentation. What can we do? For 2 hours, we worked. Patricia drafted documents with practical efficiency, formal revocation of any power of attorney, even those not yet filed, modification of my irrevocable trust to explicitly exclude claims based on alleged mental incapacity, a notarized declaration of my current mental competence, witnessed by Patricia and her paralegal, a detailed letter to the state medical board regarding Dr. Herman Thomas's willingness to falsify capacity evaluations. Patricia applied her notary seal with firm pressure. Official, legal, irreversible. She made 5 copies of everything, distributed them into separate envelopes, one for you, one for Richard Foster, one for my files, one for the safe deposit box, one to be kept sealed unless needed. She labeled each one carefully. Redundancy. They will try to claim these do not exist. We need proof in multiple locations. Will this stop them? It eliminates their legal avenue completely. And Arthur, this recording is evidence of attempted elder abuse. If they proceed, you could press charges. I do not want them arrested. The truth surprised me. I want them gone. Then we will make it impossible for them to stay. Legally, financially, and emotionally impossible. When I left her office, the rain had intensified. I drove home slowly, taking the long route through downtown. I needed time to think. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had made my decision about what came next. The house was bright with lights. Laughter could be heard from inside. They were celebrating something, probably their brilliant plan. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, rain drumming on the roof, watching them through the windows. Then I composed myself and went in. Successful errands? Sarah asked distractedly from the sofa. Very successful, I replied. The next morning, I walked into the office to find the 4 of them already seated, waiting. The staging was deliberate. Linda occupied my usual chair at the head of the table, Michael to her right, Sarah to her left, Robert at the opposite end. Only one chair remained empty, positioned like a defendant's seat, isolated and facing all of them. I noted the arrangement but took the chair without comment. I poured coffee slowly. Let the silence grow. Linda broke first. Arthur, we need to address the sleeping arrangements. That guest room situation is completely unacceptable. Unacceptable how? The sofa bed is ancient. I have barely slept. My back is in agony. We require proper accommodation. Dad is only for a few days. Sarah touched her necklace. Nervous habit. Can't you be flexible? And where would you suggest I sleep? The basement room is perfectly fine. Michael's voice conveyed casual disdain. Climate-controlled, private, comfortable. You are one person roaming around in a master suite, Linda added. We are 2 people on a sofa bed. The logic is obvious. I took a sip of coffee. The logic is that I must vacate my bedroom in my house for your comfort. The logic is that you should be gracious to your guests. No. What? Michael's head snapped up. No, I will not move to the basement. Not for a few days. Not at all. The refusal triggered something. Michael leaned forward, elbows on the table. Since we are discussing living arrangements anyway, let's address the bigger issue. This house is too much for you, Arthur. I manage fine. Do you? Linda's voice held practiced concern. 3 flights of stairs at your age, the yard work, property maintenance. It is overwhelming. Sarah and I need stable housing. Michael gestured between himself and my daughter. We are in our 30s, building careers, planning our future. You need simplicity. What exactly are you proposing? A senior residence. There are excellent communities in the city. The Gardens residence, for example. Beautiful facility. All amenities included. You have researched this. We have just looked at options, Sarah said quickly, for when the time comes. And you think the time has come? Yes. Honestly, it is overdue. Michael spread his hands. You should be somewhere with support staff, medical care, social activities, with people your age. I am 64, not 84. Age is just a number. It is about capacity. Linda cut her toast into precise squares. And realistically, you are declining. Declining? Based on what assessment? Based on observation, memory issues, mobility concerns. Difficulty maintaining this large property. I have no memory issues. My mobility is fine. The property is well maintained. You are in denial. That is common. I set my mug down carefully. And what happens to this house if I move to the Gardens? Michael smiled. It stays in the family. Obviously. Sarah inherits eventually anyway. This way she benefits now, when she needs it. I took out my phone, opened the calculator, punched in 4,500 times 12. I showed them the result. 54,000. So I pay $54,000 annually for a studio while you live here rent-free. Dad, don't make it sound so mercenary. Sarah's voice was tight. We are trying to help you. Are you? I turned to look directly at her. Sarah, look at me. She did not. Do you really believe I need this help? Or do you need this house? I think it would be better. Her voice was barely audible. For everyone. Better for me or better for your situation? Both. You would have care. We would have stability. 3 years ago, you moved here saying you needed temporary help, just until you got back on your feet. You said, was any of that true? It was true then. And now things have changed. Stop twisting her words. Michael stood abruptly, palms on the table. We are thinking of your well-being. My well-being or your inheritance. Both. Why can't it be both? Because one is generous and the other is greedy. And I am curious, which is really motivating this sudden concern for my well-being. Michael leaned over the table, menacing. You are being stubborn. Think of Sarah for once. She is your daughter. She deserves security. She has security. She has lived here rent-free for 3 years. Temporary security. We need permanent arrangements. By permanent, you mean ownership of my house. I mean appropriate distribution of family assets. You are going to end up in the gardens eventually. Cooperate now or not. Michael's voice dropped, threatening. We can do this the easy way, or we can look at other options. Explain yourself. He caught himself, realizing he had said too much. Legal options. Standard procedures for seniors who cannot properly manage their affairs. And you think I cannot manage my affairs. I think you are becoming incapable of making sound decisions. This conversation proves it. I smiled, cold, knowing. The expression clearly unsettled him. How fascinating. And these legal procedures, have you researched them? I have consulted resources, yes. What kind of resources? That is not relevant. The point is there are mechanisms, like a power of attorney perhaps. Among other things. My smile widened slightly. I see. Well, you should certainly explore all your options, although I would suggest consulting a qualified lawyer first. Legal procedures require proper documentation. Improper paperwork can lead to complications. Are you threatening us? Linda's voice was sharp. Threatening? No. Advising? The law is complex. One must be careful when attempting to invoke it. I stood up, pushed my chair back, took my mug to the sink, rinsed it methodically, placed it in the dishwasher. Every movement deliberate. I appreciate your concerns. I will give your proposal the consideration it deserves. Linda looked triumphant. So, you will look at the gardens? I will consider everything you have said. When will you decide? Michael asked. After Christmas. Speaking of which, tomorrow night I am hosting a dinner. At 6 o'clock, I have invited guests. What guests? Sarah's voice rose. I thought it was just family, old friends. People I should have included from the beginning. You will meet them tomorrow. Who, specifically? Michael's confidence wavered. People who matter. They will be interested in meeting all of you too. This is highly irregular, Linda protested. Christmas should be just for family. My house. My guest list. 6 o'clock. Dress appropriately. First impressions are important. What does that mean? It means behave your best. These guests are observant. I turned toward the door. Then I paused. Oh, and Michael, about those legal procedures you mentioned. Consult a lawyer before filing anything. You will want to make sure your documentation is watertight. Judges are particular about legitimacy, especially in elder law cases. Attempted fraud, even failed fraud, carries serious consequences. Who said anything about fraud? Did I say fraud? I meant errors. Paperwork errors. Easy to make when one rushes into legal processes without proper guidance. Arthur, what are you insinuating? Linda's voice had lost its confidence. I am not insinuating anything. I am stating facts. The law protects vulnerable people from exploitation. It is quite robust. In fact, courts take these matters seriously. I walked out the door. 6 o'clock tomorrow. Don't be late. My guests are punctual people. Behind me, silence stretched. Then Linda's voice. Uncertain. What did he mean by that? Nothing. Michael's answer lacked conviction. He is just bluffing. I don't know. Robert spoke for the second time all morning. The way he looked at you, Michael, that was not a desperate man. That was a man holding all the cards. I closed my study door and allowed myself a genuine smile. Christmas Eve arrived with gray skies and steady rain. I spent the afternoon in my study, making final calls, confirming arrangements. Sarah and Michael moved through the house like ghosts, cleaning nervously, watching clocks. Linda complained about the guest room, about the food prep, about not being consulted on the menu. By 5:45, the dining room was ready. My best china, candles lit, wine breathing on the sideboard. I had set 7 places instead of 5. I let them wonder. Precisely at 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Richard Foster was on the porch, briefcase in hand, wearing a sharp charcoal suit. Richard, right on time. Come in. I led him to the living room where the others waited. Everyone, this is Richard Foster, an old friend. Richard, my daughter, Sarah, her husband, Michael, and Michael's parents, Linda and Robert. Richard shook hands with practiced ease. I watched Michael try to assert dominance through grip strength. Richard did not react. Linda offered barely her fingertips. Dismissive. Sarah's hand was trembling. A pleasure to meet you all. Richard's voice was warm but professional. Arthur has spoken fondly of his family. How do you two know each other? Michael asked him. We have worked together on various matters over the years. Business associates, you could say. What kind of business? Linda's eyes narrowed. Legal matters, mostly. Property management, estate planning, that sort of thing. Michael tensed. You are a lawyer? I am. Although tonight I am just a friend enjoying Christmas Eve dinner. Dad didn't mention you were coming. Sarah's voice was faint. I mentioned I was inviting guests. Richard is always welcome at my table. Linda's response was ice. How lucky for him. Dinner began with forced civility. I served the first course. Pumpkin soup. Simple but elegant. Linda's first words, this vintage is pedestrian. She gestured to the wine. Quite common for a formal dinner. Michael emptied his first glass before finishing the soup. Poured a second immediately. His hands were not entirely steady. Richard kept up pleasant conversation about the city weather, the holidays, nothing substantial. But his presence unsettled them. I could see it. Sarah barely touching her food, Michael drinking faster than eating, Linda's stiff posture. Midway through the main course, Michael's wine courage kicked in. Arthur, Sarah and I have made a decision about your living situation. His words carried forced confidence. After the holidays, we will help you transition to the Gardens retirement community. They have availability. $4,500 monthly. Perfect for your needs. I cut my chicken with deliberate care. And who pays that $4,500? You will, Dad. Sarah spoke quickly. From the sale of this house, I am going to sell my house. It is the logical solution. Michael leaned back. Expansive. You move somewhere appropriate. We keep the family home. Where will you live? Here, obviously. Someone has to maintain the property. Manage everything. I put down my fork. This property is not yours to manage. Not yet. Michael's voice rose. But it will be. You are not eternal, old man. Sarah inherits eventually. We are just being practical about timing. Michael is absolutely right. Linda nodded. You are hoarding assets that should benefit the family now. Richard spoke quietly. Interesting perspective. Excuse me. Who asked for your opinion? Linda turned on him. No one. But as Arthur's legal counsel, I am naturally interested in discussions about his estate. Legal counsel? Michael's face reddened. What matters? Richard has handled my affairs for some time, I said calmly. Sarah's voice cracked. Dad, what is going on? Linda spun abruptly. Speaking of practical matters, Arthur, I am done being diplomatic about sleeping arrangements. Tomorrow is Christmas. I will not spend another exhausted night on that sofa. You will give us your bedroom tonight. No, Linda, I will not. Michael stood up, chair scraping back. Yes, you will. This is ridiculous. One person in a master suite, 2 people on a sofa, 1 person in his own bedroom, in his own house. Your house? Your bedroom? Michael's voice cracked. You keep saying that like it means something. Like you are going to be here forever. Old man, you are in our way. Everything here will be ours eventually. Why are you making this so difficult? Because it is mine. Not yours. Not eventually. Mine. How selfish. Linda's voice dripped with contempt. How absolutely selfish. Michael grabbed his wine glass, still half full. His face was crimson, his eyes unfocused. Stingy old man. You have everything and share nothing. You are selfish and pathetic. His arm jerked back. Michael, no. Sarah's warning came too late. The wine arced through the candlelight. It hit me in the face, splashed my white shirt, dripped onto the table. The cold shock of liquid, red staining white. For 3 seconds, no one moved. The glass slipped from Michael's hand, hit the table edge, shattered on the floor. Sarah stifled a scream. Linda exhaled. Satisfaction or shock? I couldn't tell. Robert stood up, moved toward the door. Richard took out his phone. I reached for my napkin, wiped my face methodically. Temple, cheek, chin, neck. I set the napkin down, stood up, took my phone from my pocket. Phase 1 complete. I scrolled to contacts, selected Detective Miller, pressed speaker. The ringtone filled the silent room. 1, 2, 3 times. Miller, detective. This is Arthur. You can come now. Everything is recorded as discussed. Her voice was professional, clear. I am 5 minutes away. Keep everyone on site. Do not let anyone leave or destroy evidence. Understood. I hung up, placed the phone on the table, looked at each of them. The color had drained from Michael's face. What did you do? Called the police. I called a detective investigating a conspiracy to commit fraud against an elderly person. Fraud? Sarah's voice was barely audible. What fraud? The plan to falsify medical documents. The scheme to obtain power of attorney through falsified mental capacity assessments. Dr. Herman Thomas. $3,000 for fabricated diagnoses. Ring a bell? Linda's hands trembled. How do you know that name? I know everything, Linda. Every detail of your conspiracy. I have known since December 20th, when you discussed it in my living room. You recorded us? Michael stumbled back. That is illegal. Richard spoke calmly. State Revised Statute 165, 540. One-party consent. Fully legal when Mr. Herrera recorded conversations in his own home. Dad, please. Sarah was crying again. This is a misunderstanding. Explain it to Detective Miller when she arrives. I am sure she will be fascinated. This is a trap. Linda's voice shook. Entrapment. This is documentation of conspiracy to commit elder abuse and fraud, said Richard. Very different things, Mrs. Morales. Through the window, I saw car lights sweep the driveway. 3 minutes had passed since the phone call. I stood by the window, wine still staining my shirt. Richard had his briefcase open, reviewing documents. Michael paced, running hands through his hair. Sarah sat frozen, mascara running. Linda maintained a rigid posture, but her hands shook. Robert was by the door, coat already retrieved. Car lights swept the driveway. An unmarked sedan parked. 2 uniformed officers emerged, followed by a woman in plain clothes. I opened the door before she could knock. Detective, thank you for coming. You recorded us? Michael stumbled back. That is illegal. Richard spoke calmly. State Revised Statute 165, 540. One-party consent. Fully legal when Mr. Herrera recorded conversations in his own home. Dad, please. Sarah was crying again. This is a misunderstanding. Explain it to Detective Miller when she arrives. I am sure she will be fascinated. You reported an assault and conspiracy to commit fraud. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a small digital recorder. Everything is documented. The assault happened minutes ago. The conspiracy, I pressed play. Michael's voice filled the room, recorded December 20th. Dr. Thomas will provide the assessment for $3,000. This is a trap. Michael's voice was too loud. He provoked us. He recorded us illegally. Miller raised a hand. Mr. Herrera, she was in her early 40 seconds. Professional demeanor, sharp eyes. She showed her credentials. Detective Elena Miller, local police. Two uniformed officers, Martinez and Lopez, remained near the entrance, blocking exits. Miller walked into the dining room, surveying it all. The wine stain on the table, the broken glass, my ruined shirt. 4 people in obvious distress. A calm lawyer with an open briefcase. So you are admitting the statements on the recording are accurate? Michael froze, realizing his mistake. My son has had too much to drink. Linda's voice was tight. He doesn't know what he is saying. Miller looked at the wine bottles. I can see that. Sir, have you consumed alcohol tonight? That is irrelevant. Actually, quite relevant for credibility and demeanor. Miller listened to key portions of both recordings. Her expression hardened when Linda's voice mentioned falsifying medical documents. She took notes. Dr. Herman Thomas, $3,000. Falsified capacity assessment. When the recording reached the moment of the wine toss, she looked at my stained shirt. Then at Michael. Did you throw a drink at Mr. Herrera? He was being impossible, refusing reasonable requests. That is not an answer. Did you throw wine at him? Michael looked around for a lawyer who wasn't there. Yes, but no buts needed. Simple assault. At minimum. She continued writing. Are you going to arrest us? Sarah's voice cracked. That depends. Mr. Herrera, do you wish to press charges for the assault? I considered it. Everyone watched. I could destroy them completely right now. Not for the assault. I want it documented. But I do not want my son-in-law arrested on Christmas Eve. Sarah exhaled. Premature relief. However, I do want the conspiracy investigated. Attempted fraud against an elderly person. Conspiracy to falsify medical documents. Attempted illegal appropriation of assets. Miller nodded. I will need to interview all of you separately. She turned to Linda. Mrs. Morales, do you know a Dr. Herman Thomas? Linda's face paled. I want a lawyer present before answering questions. It is your right, but refusal to cooperate is noted. After brief individual interviews, gathering basic information, Miller let them all go with warnings. Do not leave the city area. We will have follow-up questions. If anyone contacts Dr. Thomas or attempts to interfere with this investigation, that is obstruction. Linda stood immediately. Robert, we are leaving. Now. Sarah called to her. Mom, wait. You got us into this, Sarah. Linda's voice was cold. You and your lack of spine. We are going home. Sounds of rapid packing upstairs. 15 minutes later. The luxury SUV pulled out, heading back to their city, fleeing, although technically allowed since they were not charged. Yet, after the police left, it was past 10. Michael and Sarah sat on the sofa, stunned. I went to my study, returned with Richard. Richard opened his briefcase, took out official documents. Sarah and Michael, I am here in my capacity as legal counsel to formally serve you the following notices. He placed the documents on the coffee table. First, notice of irrevocable trust. The property at this address has been transferred to an irrevocable trust. Beneficiaries, the Cancer Research Foundation and the Regional Food Bank. Upon Mr. Herrera's death, this property transfers to said charities. You have no current or future claim on this asset. Color drained from Michael's face. Second, eviction notice. As a resident without a valid lease agreement, you are hereby given 30 days to vacate the property. Third, demand for loan repayment. Total amount owed $127,000, representing car loan, credit card payments, and other expenses paid on your behalf. Over 3 years, payment plan or legal action begins January 15th. Sarah stared at the papers. Dad, what is this? The truth. Everything I gave you was documented as loans. You signed the papers, you just never read them. Michael picked up the car loan document. Saw Sarah's signature. $32,000 for the car. With interest, said Richard. And that is just one item. You can't do this. Sarah's voice cracked. I am your daughter. You told me not to call you that anymore. I am honoring your request. Sarah picked up the trust document, hands shaking. Cancer research. Food bank, not me. Because charity will not try to defraud me, falsify documents to declare me incompetent, or conspire to lock me in a memory care facility I do not need. She grabbed the eviction notice. 30 days, Where are we supposed to go? That is not my concern. You made it clear tonight you do not want to be my daughter. Daughters do not demand their fathers be institutionalized so they can steal property. The loan document showed the total $127,000. We can't pay this. Then you will face collections, wage garnishment, asset seizure. The legal process applies to everyone. Richard gathered his copies. You have 30 days to vacate. Loan repayment is due January 15th. Any questions must go through proper legal channels. He left. The front door closed. Sarah and Michael sat in silence. Documents spread before them as evidence of their own destruction. Finally, understanding, they had lost everything. Christmas morning arrived hollow and quiet. I woke early, made coffee in my kitchen without interference for the first time in 3 years. The absence of tension felt strange, almost unfamiliar. Upstairs, Michael and Sarah had not slept. I had heard them moving all night, voices murmuring, laptop keys clicking. Around 8, Michael appeared at my study door, eyes red from staring at a screen, not tears. We need to talk. I did not look up from my book. We have nothing to discuss. Everything was explained last night. I am going to get a lawyer. Those documents won't hold up. Feel free to consult a lawyer. Richard Foster followed the law precisely. You will waste money, but it is your choice. He clenched his jaw. You manipulated Sarah into signing those papers. I offered assistance with expenses. She signed standard loan agreements. If she didn't read them, that is her responsibility. No court will uphold this. Every court will. Documents are notarized, witnessed. They are legally binding. Your lawyer will tell you the same thing after charging you several $1,000s. He left. 2 hours later, he was gone in Sarah's car, heading to some lawyer willing to meet on Christmas Day. At noon, he returned. I heard him enter, heard Sarah's urgent questions, heard his defeated answer. He says we have no case. That afternoon, Sarah found me in the living room. She had been crying all morning, tried the emotional approach one last time. Dad, I am your daughter, blood, family. You can't really go through with this. I remained in my chair, book open. You told me not to call you my daughter. December 23rd, approximately 7:46 p.m. Those were your exact words. I was upset. I didn't mean it. I looked at her properly. You meant it enough to say it in front of witnesses, including a police detective. You meant it enough to support a plan to have me declared incompetent and institutionalized. Which part exactly didn't you mean? She had no answer. Tears. Apologies. Promises to do better. Everything flowed freely. I remained unmoved. I would have forgiven greed. I would have forgiven manipulation, but you conspired to take my freedom. That crosses a line that cannot be uncrossed. The next day, Michael's desperation took a predictable turn. He contacted the local newspaper with his version. Cruel father evicts his own daughter right after Christmas, demanding payment for gifts given over years, leaving her homeless over a family dispute. The reporter published a brief online article. For a few hours, social media buzzed with outrage. People loved that narrative. Heartless father, suffering children. Michael thought he was winning. Then, I made my move. I contacted the same reporter, provided full context, recordings of the conspiracy, documentation of the power of attorney scheme, proof of attempted fraud, copies of loan agreements showing legitimate debt collection. I also provided Detective Miller's statement, confirming an active investigation into conspiracy to commit elder abuse. The reporter, realizing she had nearly published a one-sided story about fraud victims, issued a correction and a full investigative piece. Local businessman, victim of family fraud scheme. The article detailed everything. The conspiracy, the corrupt doctor plan, the wine assault. Michael's name appeared prominently. His original sympathetic narrative was destroyed in hours. That night, Michael's phone rang. His supervisor. Michael, we have seen the news coverage. The company cannot associate with someone involved in an elder abuse investigation. We are placing you on unpaid leave pending resolution. Corporate speak for you are probably fired. 2 hours later, Sarah received a similar call from the salon owner. This publicity is not good for business. Clients are uncomfortable. I am sorry, but I have to let you go. Both unemployed in a matter of hours. Their modest but stable income evaporated. That night, they sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by laptop screens, showing apartments they couldn't afford, loan applications already denied, job offers now impossible because internet searches of their names. Michael slammed his laptop shut. This is impossible. We have nothing. We can't afford to move. We can't afford to stay. We can't afford a lawyer to fight this. Sarah stared at her phone, reading comments. Hundreds of strangers celebrating their downfall. Greedy, scheming, karma. She looked at Michael. My father did this. He planned every piece. For months, maybe years. We never had a chance. Michael's reply was bitter. We had every chance. We just thought we were smarter than him. We were wrong. Morning of December 27th, Michael woke after maybe 2 hours of sleep. Sarah was already up, laptop open, scrolling through apartment listings with dead eyes. She had been doing this since 5 a.m. Search, calculate, realize it is impossible. Repeat. How about this one? Pointed to a studio. $200 monthly. Michael joined her, forgetting coffee. $200 plus deposit, that is $600. We have $4,200. Minus moving truck, utility deposits, food. He let the sentence hang. We would be broke in a week. They kept looking anyway because the alternative was accepting they were trapped. By noon, they had called 15 apartment complexes. Every conversation followed the same script. Yes, we are interested. Credit check. Well, there is some outstanding debt. How much? $127,000. No, I understand. Thank you anyway. 13 rejected them immediately. 2 said maybe, but required co-signers with excellent credit. They had no one. Michael tried a private landlord on a classified site. The landlord Googled their names during the call. Are you the one in the local paper article about the fraud investigation? Click. Dial tone. Their names were poison. Sarah went to the bank, hoping for a personal loan. The loan officer was sympathetic until he checked credit. Mrs. Morales, you have a recorded debt of $127,000 with an active collection notice. Your debt-to-income ratio is, well, infinite, since you are currently unemployed. I cannot approve any credit. What about our savings? He verified $4,587.23 in their joint checking account. That is all you have with us. She had hoped there was more somewhere. There wasn't. Mid-afternoon, Michael decided to sell Sarah's car. Retrieved title from filing cabinet. Owner name, Arthur Herrera. He reread it 3 times. The vehicle they had driven for 2 years wasn't theirs at all. He found me in my study. The car is yours? According to title and loan agreement, yes. It is collateral for debt. We need it for work, to find housing. You are welcome to keep using it until you vacate. After that, it reverts to me as partial debt payment. That is worth $25,000. That barely covers a fraction of what you claim we owe. Correct. Which is why the remaining $102,000 will still need to be addressed. Night found them again at the kitchen table. Sarah had a legal pad full of calculations, all crossed out. Current assets, $4,187. Minimum housing deposit, $3,500. Remaining, $687. Monthly expenses, food, $400. Phones, $40. Insurance, $200. Gas, $100. Total, $840. Deficit, $153. And that is before rent. Michael looked over her shoulder. This assumes we find an apartment that accepts us, which we can't. Assumes we have income, which we don't. Sarah drew a circle around the numbers. We are in a $150,000 hole if you count the debt. We earn nothing. We own nothing. Your father knew this exact calculation. He designed it so there is no escape. Sarah stared at the pad. No. He designed it so we would understand exactly what we did. We lived off him completely. Every comfort we had was his. We just didn't realize it because he never rubbed it in. Until now, that night, Sarah found me in the living room, reading by the lamp. She stood in the doorway. No tears, just exhaustion. What do you want? Tell me. Money? Public apology? Me on my knees? What would stop this? I marked my page. closed the book, looked at her properly for first time in days. I want you to understand something fundamental. Dignity is not bought, cannot be traded or borrowed. You sold yours for illusion of easy money, a house you didn't earn, wealth you didn't build, security you didn't create. I am not punishing you, Sarah. I am removing support you took for granted and forcing you to stand on your own merit. If you have none, that is not my failure. It is yours. She stood there, those words sinking in. For first time, she wasn't arguing or manipulating. She was listening. You have been planning this how long? 3 years. Since the day I realized you saw me as an obstacle to inheritance instead of a father. And there is nothing I can do. Nothing that changes your mind. You had 3 years to treat me with respect. You chose contempt. You had chances to be honest. You chose conspiracy. You had opportunities to see me as human. You chose to see me as an asset to acquire. Those choices are final. These consequences are earned. She turned to leave, stopped at door. Did you ever love me? Your daughter? My voice was low but clear. I love the daughter I raised. I don't know who you have become. She walked out. I returned to my book, lamp casting warm light in my reclaimed home. Upstairs, Sarah packed what little actually belonged to them, which turned out to be almost nothing. Sarah woke to winter sunlight streaming through windows that would never be hers. Today was departure day, December 28th. The deadline I had given them reduced from 30 days to 10. No extensions, no negotiations, no mercy. She looked around the guest room, her temporary home for 3 years. She saw it clearly now. They had always been guests, never residents, never family. Michael was already up. 2 suitcases open on bed, mostly empty. That is all we can take. He gestured around room. Everything else is his. The bed, dresser, lamp, even hangers. We take our clothes and leave. 2 suitcases for 3 years of life. That was the sum of what they actually owned. They went through possessions methodically, discovering truth in every item. Sarah reached for jewelry box. Gifts from me for birthdays and Christmases. Can I take these? Michael checked documents from Richard Foster. Gifts valued over $500 revert to estate as debt payment. How much are those worth? Maybe $3,000. Leave them. Her laptop, bought by me for salon work. This belongs to him. Leave it. Kitchen appliances, bought on my credit card. Artwork selected with my money. Mine. Books. Decorations. Cookware. All stamped with my invisible ownership. By noon, 2 suitcases contained clothes, toiletries, a few personal photos. That was total. 3 years reduced to a couple of fabric bags and memories. At 2 p.m. They did a final walkthrough. Every room was a monument to their illusion. Dining room where they had eaten hundreds of meals. My table, my chairs, my food. Living room where they had watched TV. My TV, my sofa, my subscription. Sarah stood in kitchen. Hand on granite counter, I told people this was my house. Gave home renovation advice like I owned it. We were wrong, Michael said. Including us. They carried suitcases down. I was in my study, door open, deliberately visible. They passed without speaking. I did not look up from my computer. They were already gone to me. They drove to Star Motel on Busy Avenue, type of place that rents by week, takes cash, asks no questions. $65 a night was all they could afford. Room was 200 square feet. 1 bed, 1 bathroom. Window overlooking parking lot. Ancient TV bolted to dresser. Heater rattled. Carpet had stains. This was what $4,000 bought. 60 nights of barely adequate shelter. Sarah sat on bed, testing springs. They squeaked. She thought of guest room bed they just left. Memory foam. High thread count sheets. Quiet comfort. This is our life now. Michael dropped suitcases. Temporarily. Until we get back on our feet. Back on our feet how? We have no jobs, no references, no credit. And everyone who Googles our names finds articles about fraud. At 4 p.m., someone knocked. Courier with certified mail. Michael signed. Opened it. Letterhead from local police department. Reinvestigation. Conspiracy to commit elder abuse. Case closed. Insufficient evidence to prosecute. While recorded conversations demonstrate intent to commit fraud, No actual fraudulent actions were completed. Case filed as resolved with notation. What does that mean? Sarah asked. It means we won't be charged, but it is permanently documented. Any future background check will show we were investigated for elder abuse conspiracy. So we are guilty without being convicted. We are stained, which is almost worse. A conviction you can eventually clear. Suspicion follows you forever. An hour later, another envelope. National Credit Services. Debt collection notice. $127,000. Principal plus accrued interest. Payment plan required within 30 days, or wage garnishment proceedings commence. Payment options. $3,000 monthly for 4 years or $1,000. $500 monthly for 8 years or one-time settlement of $110,000. This is impossible, Michael said. Sarah read over his shoulder. What happens if we don't pay? Wage garnishment, asset seizure, liens on property, credit reporting, civil judgment. Can they take money we don't have from jobs we don't have? We signed the papers. That is all that matters legally. Night fell. They sat on bed. There was nowhere else to sit. TV remained off. Heater rattled. Couple arguing in next room. Voices leaking through thin walls. Michael stared at debt notice. Sarah stared at police letter. 2 sheets of paper summarizing their destruction. He planned this? Michael said finally. Every detail. The loans. The trust. The recording. The timing. This wasn't a reaction. It was an execution. For 3 years we lived in his house. Ate his food. Drove his car. Spent his money, Sarah said. And we complained it wasn't enough. We saw him as an obstacle instead of... She couldn't finish. Instead of what? A person. A father. Sarah nodded. We forgot he was human. We treated him like an inheritance waiting to happen. They sat in silence. Outside, city lights glowed. A city full of people living their lives, unaware of small tragedy in room 211 of Star Motel. 2 people who bet everything on greed and lost. Sarah lay down, fully clothed, staring at water-stained ceiling, understanding finally and completely that there was no going back. This was her life now. This was what they had earned. That same night, December 28th, around 9 p.m., I sat in my reading chair, the leather one I had owned for 15 years, book open but unread on my lap. The house was silent in a way it hadn't been in 3 years, not empty. Inhabited, by choice, for peace. No blaring TV from guest room. No arguments about money, about me, about their entitled future. Just subtle sounds of an old house settling. Wood contracting with winter cold. Furnace kicking on. Rain starting against windows. This was my house again. Whole. Undeniable. Peacefully mine. On coffee table lay thick folder I had assembled over 3 years. I opened it one last time, reviewing Chronicle. Page 1. Transcript of overheard conversation. June 2022. Michael telling Sarah, "He won't last forever, and this house will be worth a fortune." Page 15. Photographs of my original will versus new irrevocable trust. Page 32. Audio transcripts of conspiracy from December 20th. Every damning sentence. Page 45. Sarah's signatures on 8 loan agreements, each clearly titled, each legally binding. I documented everything because I had learned a hard lesson. Family alone is not enough. Without respect, without basic decency, family becomes predation. This folder was my shield. Now, my vindication. I reached for my phone, dialed Richard Foster. "Richard, this is Arthur. They left at 2 p.m. as required. Wanted to thank you for your precision." He assured me trust was watertight. Debt collection proceeding normally. Eviction was legally unappealable. Next call. Patricia Roberts. "Patricia, trust is executed. Cancer Research Foundation and Regional Food Bank will receive property upon my death. Thank you for 20 years of faithful service." She expressed satisfaction at having protected me. 2 phone calls, 2 partnerships concluded. Legal architecture of my protection was complete. I stood by window, looking at city lights scattered across valley. Cancer Research. My wife had fought that battle 8 years ago. Losing finally, house she loved would fund research so others might win. Food bank. I remembered childhood hunger, remembered my mother stretching meals impossibly. This house would feed people who needed it. Sarah and Michael wanted this property to fund their comfort, their leisure, their avoidance of responsibility. Instead, it would serve people who actually needed help. That felt right. Not vindictive. Right. Justice aligned with compassion. Just not compassion for those who tried to exploit me. I turned back to my family, allowed myself to remember. 3 years ago, Sarah moved in with promises it was just temporary. I had believed her, wanted to help. But within months, dynamics shifted. I became inconvenience, obstacle, old man in way. Little comments. You really need all this space. Financial requests. Just help us with car payment. Dismissive gestures. Eye rolls when I spoke. Conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. I saw it happening and made a decision. Document everything. Prepare for worst, hope for best. Worst arrived. My preparation saved me. I felt no guilt about that. I expected to feel victorious. I had won, after all. Kept my home. Exposed their scheme. Protected my assets. Restored order. But sitting in that quiet house, I felt something different. Deep sadness mixed with relief. I had lost my daughter. Not to death, but to choices. Her choices, not mine. She had chosen greed over relationship, conspiracy over honesty, entitlement over gratitude. I had responded by removing myself from exploitation, but cost was permanent rupture. 36 years of fatherhood ended. I wasn't happy about it, but I was at peace with it. There are prices worth paying to maintain dignity. I stood up, walked through my house room by room. Guest bedroom. I would turn it into a library. Eliminate every trace of their occupation. Dining room. I would restore that wine-stained table, repair damaged. Kitchen. Reorganize for one-person efficiency. My projects. My space. Every room would be reclaimed, reimagined, repurposed. This wasn't end of my life. It was a beginning. I was 64 years old. Healthy, financially secure, and finally free of people who saw me as a resource instead of a person. I stepped out onto back terrace. Cold December air sharpened my lungs. Below, city glittered. Above, stars emerged between clouds. I raised my coffee mug in silent salute to myself, to dignity, to boundaries, to courage to protect yourself from those who would harm you. Even when they are family, especially when they are family. Finished my coffee, went back inside, locked door, turned off lights. Tomorrow would start again. Tonight, I would rest in silence I had earned. Silence after storm. Silence of a home that was finally, completely, peacefully mine. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to William's Revenge Stories and share your thoughts on this story in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box on the left. Thanks for watching.